It's always a pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful and honoured to be invited to speak. I'm sure that a lot of what I will say will be familiar, but I would like to frame a way of understanding the contribution of language education to employment and economic development, because I think it is really a key area where the need for languages is extremely strong and is not sufficiently recognised. As you know, there are many reasons for learning and teaching languages. And 6 or 7 years ago, my team did a study, a research project to discover how many reasons there are for learning languages. And we came across 732, but for a round number, we decided to call it 700 reasons. Of course, many of those reasons are closely linked, but broadly, there are 5 areas into which they fell. The whole area of citizenship and democracy, participation in society, social inclusion and identity, knowing who you are, being able to develop your sense of self. Personal development and values are obviously important. There are many reasons why people feel enriched by the opportunities that languages offer them. And not forgetting international understanding, war and peace. Of course, international understanding is a double-edged sword, as we say. But again, many people are motivated to use their languages to be able to understand the world better, and countries need that understanding. But probably the largest reason that we identified was the motivation to learn languages for employment and economic development. Now, we examined the experience of individuals, but also the experience of representatives of businesses and other kinds of organisation. So employment, if you like, I'd see as an individual motivation, and economic development as a social motivation for why countries should promote the learning of languages. And in the current terminology of the European Union, employment and economic development means jobs and growth. And you will find jobs and growth repeated endlessly in all the European programmes and probably in all the declarations of member states, not least because jobs and growth are in very short supply just at the moment, and it's just possible that languages have something to contribute to them. Looking at employment, languages as an asset for the individual, it's clear that when an individual has competence in several languages, it increases the range of jobs for which they can apply. It makes the world a larger place and gives them more opportunities. It increases the number of places that people can work. And now the world is not only a larger place, but also a smaller place. People are very mobile, and the ability to go and work in different places, see different places to work, is a real enrichment of people's job possibilities. And then, of course, improving career progression is an important part of the benefit which languages bring. we often find that our graduates from language degrees will go into jobs which don't specifically require a language. They train to be managers or journalists or whatever it is. But then a couple of years later in their career, an opportunity comes to transfer to the Paris office or the Moscow station or whatever it is. And because they have those language skills, they are in, as we say, pole position to take those international opportunities and progress their career. Sorry, I was just muttering to myself that I pressed the wrong button. Why languages are an asset for individuals is because they bring key skills. And I think that means that it's not simply the matter of being able to understand and speak a range of languages, and not even really just a matter of having a broader perspective on the world where you understand differences between culture. I think language programs bring other key skills, generic skills, which employers value very highly. And one or two speakers earlier today have referred to some of these. Certainly the cognitive range of someone with several languages in their portfolio means that they find it easier to be creative. They can see how things look from different perspectives. They've got ideas which may have emerged in a completely foreign environment but could be transferred. And they are very capable of being critical because they understand more than one system of communication, more than one culture, and they can analyze the differences, compare and criticize. And I think those are important skills. Communication, in all the surveys that we have done in Britain of employers, asking them which skills they would like graduates to possess, communication skills always come at the top of the list. Communication is becoming more important, and many businesses depend on communication for their existence. And certainly, if you can't communicate, then your business cannot thrive. So employers very much value these. Intercultural competence, similarly, is not really so much about speaking foreign languages as being comfortable in establishing relationships with people from a different background, regardless of whether you understand their language specifically, regardless of whether you've been to the country they come from. The kind of natural empathy which language degrees give means that employers can take workers who can move and navigate through the world with more comfort. And then finally, and that's related, human relations. Languages are not something that you can do on your own. They generally require you to be in contact, at least virtually, if not physically, with other people. And to be a linguist needs you to be able to take risks in your relationships, to say hello to somebody and not be timid. There's a kind of confidence which enables linguists to build relationships more effectively. So, from the point of view of the skill set and from the point of view of the opportunities, linguists have definite advantages in employment. Let me move to economic development. This is the issue of languages as an asset to countries and enterprises. The notion that languages are an asset is a very fundamental part of EU policy documents. I think it belongs to what I would call the acquis linguistique, and it means that it's in the interest of countries and of businesses to promote and improve languages. Why is that? Well, it is pretty self-evident, I guess, that countries and businesses need to understand the global environment in which they work. They need to be able to see opportunities. And this is more important every year because the shape of business shifts very quickly. Companies can rise and fall in the space of a few years. 10 years ago, who'd heard of Facebook? Had it been invented, even? But now, the ability to be nimble, as it were, in understanding the world is of central importance to countries and to businesses. In terms of access to markets, it's clear that languages and a firm portfolio of language expertise enables markets to be accessed, either for import or for export. And I think it's been a traditional practice in languages to emphasize the value of languages for the export trade. You go away to foreign countries and you can speak to them in their own language. And that, of course, is true. But increasingly, the difference between here and there is being eroded, and the import trade is just as important and just as multilingual as the export trade. And I think, thanks to modern communications and internet and so on, geography is in the process of being abolished, and the access to markets is an instantaneous here and now business, regardless of where the commodities end up being consumed. Third benefit for economic development is the ability to establish better relations with business partners, with international partners, and with suppliers and traders. I think the importance of relationships between countries and between businesses is becoming more important than ever, not least with the arrival of China into the centre of global trade. And it is notorious that to do business with China depends on relationships, not on contracts or pieces of paper. And I think this is a lesson being learned. Providing a better service to customers goes along with that. So, my final slide, the lessons for language educators. All that I've said will, I think, be fairly familiar to you in principle, if not in detail. But I think as language educators, we don't always draw the full implications of these arguments. In particular, the benefits of languages are not always understood. We understand them, but do businesses and countries understand them? Well, some do and some don't, but there is a lot more work that we need to do to make sure that the message gets through. It's not simply enough for us to sit in our classrooms. I think we increasingly have to go out into the public spaces and improve public understanding through our own efforts and interventions. We need to be more outward facing than we sometimes have been. Second lesson, for economic benefits, there is no real alternative to talking to and working with the people in the economy. So we need to cooperate more freely and more extensively with employers. And I say this as a kind of countercultural point, because for many years linguists felt, I think, that business and commercial enterprises were in some sense out of bounds, if not actually evil, then at least dubious places to be. I think the time has moved on, and that we do need to find out who these devils are, and to make sure that we can work with them where our interests and values do coincide. And of course, understand where our values and interests don't coincide. The economic benefits of languages also are not automatic. We're inclined to say, yes, if you learn languages, you become more intercultural. But you don't necessarily become more intercultural. And we know we've done research on students spending a year studying abroad. And we know that some students come back being much more open to the world, and some students come back feeling that the world out there is a terrible place, and they are very pleased to be back home. So that the opening and the freeing effects of languages are not automatic. So I think the lesson for us as language educators is, first of all, that we need to make sure that our courses do include wider skills in a more consistent way. And probably this is something that needs to be written into benchmark statements very clearly, so that our learning outcomes are not simply about mastering grammar or communicating, but they are also about learning to work in teams, cooperating, being able to form relationships, and so on. And finally, our language courses do need to make those benefits explicit, because quite often we discover that, well, we know that our students are more confident and outgoing than many of the students of other subjects, but our students themselves don't always feel that way, and they need, I think, to be made more aware of the much wider range of skills that they are acquiring when they're studying languages. We know that there are benefits. It's easy to explain them, but our students need to have it laid out to them more frequently and more clearly than we sometimes do. And that means it'll be in course outlines, it needs to be on our websites, our prospectuses, and it needs to be in the heads of the teachers in the classrooms who can take the opportunity to say, look, you've just done some pair work, you've established a good rapport with that person that you've never met. That's a benefit of learning languages, which is not just about speaking. I think I'll stop there, and thank you all very much.